Today, Red Dress Day, we have gathered alongside the families of Tatyanna Harrison, Chelsea Poorman, and Noelle O'Soup, joined by Grand Chief Stuart Phillip of the Union of B.C. Indian Chiefs, to demand answers and call for justice. The investigations into all three of these girls' disappearances and suspicious deaths were wrought with missteps, failures, and neglect from the beginning. Their families have been left with agonizing questions and enduring grief under the weight of a legacy of genocidal violence, systemic racism, and sexist discrimination that has given rise to an epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. From the beginning of the investigations, the families were left to search for their missing girls on their own, to investigate their cases, to bring leads to investigators and hope they'd be followed. Their families' search for answers did not end when their deaths were deemed not criminal or not suspicious. They did not stop when they were told that fentanyl was the killer. After first announcing that Tatyanna Harrison's death was due to a fentanyl overdose, the BC coroner eventually concluded that she died of sepsis. And the RCMP has maintained that her death remains non-suspicious, largely based on the coroner's findings and despite the many unanswered questions and highly suspicious details surrounding her death and her disappearance. Due to the remaining questions, and on behalf of Natasha Harrison, we obtained an independent second review and opinion from a well-respected and licensed forensic pathologist into the death of Tatyanna Harrison. Upon review of the forensic evidence made available to him by the BC coroner, the pathologist disagrees with their findings on her cause of death and concluded that there is no compelling evidence that Tatyanna died of sepsis. Furthermore, it is his opinion that the manner of her death should be ruled as undetermined, in contradiction to what the coroner found. This is the second time her family has received information that calls the coroner's investigation into question. Initially, the coroner told the family that her death was due to fentanyl overdose in 2022, with no explanation as to why her cause of death changed to sepsis 6 months later. Her family learned that no rape kit had been done during her autopsy, despite the fact that Tatyanna was found partially naked on a dry docked yacht with no explanation of how she got there, with whom she was with, or why she was there. The family was left to advocate for the rape kit that to this day the RCMP has not processed. The list of questions surrounding her case are endless, as are the questions in Noelle and Chelsea's cases. The list of failures is just as long. The list of failures is a virtual recitation of the findings from over 6 investigations and inquiries into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Most of those recommendations are collecting dust on shelves and have never been implemented. The role of the coroner is essential to the administration of justice. The public must be able to put faith in their investigations and findings. This latest information seriously calls our ability to do that into question. Alongside the families, Justice for Girls, and the Union of B.C. Indian Chiefs, and with the endorsement of other human rights organizations, are calling on Minister Gary Begg, Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General, to direct a coroner's inquest into the suspicious deaths of Tatyanna, Noelle, and Chelsea. Though this action should have been taken 3 years ago, this is an opportunity for the province to begin to right this egregious historical wrong and continues until this day. And it's an opportunity for the coroner's office to regain public trust and to bring much needed answers about what happened to Tatyanna, Noelle, and Chelsea. I will now turn this over to Natasha Harrison, Tatyanna's mom, to say a few words. Following her will be Josie August, Noelle O'Soup's aunt, and then Sheila Poorman, Chelsea Poorman's mom. We will end with comments from Grand Chief Stuart Phillip before moving to questions.
Hi, I'm Natasha Harrison. I'm Tatyanna Harrison's mom. It's been 3 years, still no answers. Even on the most basic level, no answers on her cause of death, no answers on a sexual assault kit done, no answers on how she came to travel about that marina, no answers or any camera footage. There have been no answers for 3 years. If you were to help somebody hide a crime, that in itself would be a crime. So I don't know what happens when our justice system does it. Everything you did in Tatyanna's case, everything they did in Tatyanna's case is exactly what you would have needed to do to fail her. When you base your investigation off of a coroner's report, what happens when that report is incorrect? You have lost pivotal time due to an improper investigation. I somewhat expected a lot of theory and speculation to come from police. I expected the coroner to present me with facts based on science and medical knowledge. That did not happen for my daughter. Every question I had for the coroner, police, and RCMP, it didn't bring me clarity on what happened to Tatyanna. It left me confused, and now with a list of even more questions that have yet to be answered to this day. When the coroner tells me my daughter passed a certain way, I expect that professional to be able to tell me how they came to that conclusion. And I expect that conclusion to be rooted in knowledge, science, and not a hypothetical scenario based on bias and a preconceived notion on who you thought Tatyanna was. It's been 3 years of fighting for basic human rights for Tatyanna, fighting for a fair investigation for my daughter. For 3 years, she hasn't been laid to rest. For 3 years, I haven't been able to properly grieve her loss. Instead of speaking about her, I'm forced to speak about what happened to her. Now, let me talk about my baby. I miss my baby girl. Okay. Sorry, give me a second. I miss my baby girl. She is such an intelligent little light, and I feel sorry for anybody who didn't get to meet her. She had such a powerful voice and a compassionate heart. She enjoyed reading, and she enjoyed helping people, and I remember going into stores and I couldn't pass someone in need without her making me help them. Even if I was broke, I still had to do it. Like, we couldn't. She enjoyed camping, and she enjoyed being out by the water, and enjoyed the forests, and enjoyed jet skiing, and she enjoyed her friends. And we couldn't even have an argument with her. Everything was a debate. It was all up for debate with Tatyanna. Little Tatyanna, we used to always tell her, like, this isn't a negotiation. She just wanted fairness and justice. And the irony is she's being failed in that very way. You know, I haven't been given the time that I deserve to properly grieve my daughter, because for 3 years I have to fight for basic answers. These are basic human rights that everybody else gets. So I don't understand why this isn't given to my daughter. Why I have to fight to get a proper coroner's report. Why do I have to ask you guys the questions that you should be doing? You should be allowing me to just bury my daughter. Instead, I don't get to do that. Instead, I have to fight you for something everybody else just gets. She didn't do anything. She didn't deserve to be treated this way. You know, none of these girls did. I'm ashamed to say where I come from now, because I know how the system works, because I got a front row seat. I got a front row seat and got to see what they do. And at first I thought it was incompetence, but I'm having a very difficult time believing that today. You know, I really hope that this gives the inquest that Tatyanna deserved from the very beginning, but it changes things for families in the future, because I can't bear the thought of another mother having to walk that same path that I did. You know, at least we can try our best to not only get an inquest for all 3 of these girls, but make that walk a little softer for the next mom. You know, have these changes in place so that isn't such a rough road for the next mom. You know, this isn't the country that should be treating people like this. You know, we're supposed to be leading the way and showing people around the world that you know, we treat everyone with fairness and kindness, and that's not what's happening, not behind the scenes. You know, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and I appreciate everybody hearing us and making this public so that we can just get an inquest for my daughter. Thank you. Oh, I'm good.
Hello, my name is Josie August, and I've been the family spokesperson for Noelle O'Soup since she's been discovered. I can say without a doubt that she was failed at every level by this country, by this government, by child welfare, by the Vancouver Police, by the RCMP. She was 13 years old, 13, not 14, 13 years old when she ran away from a group home in the care of the ministry in Backfast. What is a 13-year-old doing on the downtown east side with a known predator? Why wasn't there any intervention for her? Why was there no police or a coroner there when she was discovered in an apartment? It's been 3 years and there are no answers. We have yet to hear from the Ministry of Children and Family, from the social worker who removed her from her family. There was no reunification for Noelle and her family, and this has left a huge hole in her family's hearts. And to sit here and say she was 14, she was not. And I keep saying she was 13 years old. And not having a coroner there present when her body was found, how do we know the right steps of gathering evidence? You know, why was she put on the news? It was Noelle O'Soup, 14, found on the downtown east side, yet the other lady was unknown lady. To me, being Indigenous, being a youth in care, she should have never been frontline in the news. We found more out on the media than we have from Vancouver Police, from the ministry, and this has caused great harm to the family where, you know, we no longer can watch the news. Her family in Saskatchewan found out she was discovered through social media, through the news, and she needs a proper investigation. And it wasn't until we started doing action, doing a demonstration outside the Vancouver Police, that we actually got a call from the coroner stating she had fentanyl and cocaine in her system. When we asked how much, they said a lethal amount. Well, what is a lethal amount for a 13-year-old child? And this is what I want to make it known. She was a child. Why did it take 8 days for a missing persons report? She had disabilities. Why was there not an Amber Alert put forward for her? And it didn't stop at Noelle. There was a youth on the island. Same thing, same circumstances. So for me, I would really want the public and everybody to think of their child. How would you feel if that was your 13-year-old child found on the downtown east side? How would you want your daughter to have justice, to have a voice who did not have a voice, who did not deserve to be found on the downtown east side? What 13-year-old is down there? So a proper coroner's investigation would be a step in the right direction for her family to move forward, for other youth that are in care, because it will not end at Noelle O'Soup. This has left a huge hole in her family. And I keep saying 13 because she should not be passed away. She should be with her friends. She should be with her family doing teenage girl things. So, you know, I really do hope that everybody does call for a proper investigation, a proper coroner's inquest, and accountability for everyone who failed this child. Thank you, everyone. And I do really hope the media does remember she was 13, she was not 14. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sheila Poorman. I'm Chelsea Poorman's mother. It's been 3 years since I got the phone call from the Vancouver police that they had found Chelsea behind a mansion. And in the original phone call that I got was, they didn't inform me that her death wasn't suspicious. They did not tell me that, but they put it out on the news that her death was not suspicious. And for them to say that was totally wrong. The way my daughter was found, she was missing limbs, she was missing finger bones, she was missing her cranium, and you cannot say that that's not suspicious. They don't know how she died. It was, her death is undetermined to this day. For my daughter to be found in that mansion, she did not go there alone. She did not know the city. She had disabilities. She couldn't walk very far. She had a head trauma from incidents that she was in an accident and then she was assaulted shortly after. So in order to be able to walk that distance, she wouldn't be able to. So somebody took her to that mansion. Somebody brought her there. Somebody knew that location. And somebody knows what happened to my daughter. To this day, I have no answers. I only have questions that I'm left with. And the questions are, I haven't gotten no reports of from the coroner. I haven't gotten no reports from the investigation itself as to what they have done. She was found actually April 22nd. They didn't tell me until May 6th. I put a missing persons report on her. September 8th, they didn't put it out into the media until 11 days later. Like, why would they treat my daughter different than anybody else's daughter? Is it just because of the lifestyle that she lived? Is it because of the way that she looked? Was it because she was First Nation? My daughter deserves more than what she's gotten so far, and which is absolutely nothing. So right now, I would like answers. And the one answer that I'd like is to know why. Why didn't the police pursue the investigation to bring it out into the public? Why didn't they allow us to know that they found remains in that house until weeks later? Chelsea was a person who wouldn't hurt anyone. She'd rather give whatever she had to help somebody. She would go out of her way to help a person in need, even though she didn't have the resources herself. I brought her up to be kind to others. I always told her to treat others the way you want to be treated. And for her to be treated like this, even though she's not here, it's not right. So I wouldn't want no other family to be going through this. And if there's answers there that the police have or the coroner has, I would like those to be brought forward. Thank you.
Right, Pisnak Seal, Isquis Asiut. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Musqueam people, the Tsleil-Waututh people, and the Squamish people, on whose territories we have the privilege of doing our business here today. I want to, on behalf of the Union of B.C. Indian Chiefs, the First Nations Summit, and our BC Regional Chief, Terry Teegee, express our sincere sympathies and condolences to the families here that have lost loved ones under very brutal and violent circumstances. As we all know in this room, this is not a new issue. I've been president of the Union of B.C. Indian Chiefs now for 27 years, and I've spent considerable time at press conferences, marches, candlelight vigils. I attend the February 14th Memorial March every year. I just got back from Enderby at a Red Dress Day memorial celebration a couple of days ago. And these events are taking place across Canada and have so for many years. I want to take a moment to thank the press for being here, to record the first-hand accounts from the family members who have lost loved ones. And I want to thank you for the work you do at creating a broader awareness throughout society about this tragedy that is not only unending, it's growing. And as you can hear from the remarks offered here today, we hear every day about pipelines going across this country. We hear about accelerated resource development projects. We hear tariffs, but we don't hear about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. We don't hear about the interests of Indigenous peoples in this country. We're an afterthought. In most cases, any concerns that we bring forward are completely dismissed. I think it's absolutely egregious. It's unbelievable, the negligence that has been displayed by the Vancouver Police Department in regard to these three cases here, these three young ladies. I'm sure some of you remember back in 2009 in April, Wendy Ladner-Beaudry, who went missing in the UBC endowment lands. There was an absolute massive response to that woman going missing. She was white. There was a task force established. There was a $30,000 reward set up for information leading to the conclusion of that investigation. But you haven't heard of a similar response to these three cases here. You never do. They're dismissed. They're not fully investigated. And quite frankly, that has to change. We are not going away anytime soon. We're going to continue this work. We're going to continue marching. We're going to continue with the vigils. And we're going to start looking at suing police departments and government agencies, class action lawsuits. We have to do something that's going to move the government authorities to provide sufficient resources to follow these cases through. Anything else is absolutely unacceptable. So in regard to all of this, I speak to you as a great-grandfather and a grandfather, 17 grandchildren, 6 granddaughters. And we all have a vested interest in what's happening. The dismissive attitude towards the human rights, the rights to safety of women in our society. And we all have a responsibility, particularly men, to stand up and to speak up and to speak against what people look at as just another ho-hum situation. So again, I thank you all for being here. And again, blessings to the family. Why? Lim Lim.
I'm just wondering whether Justice for Girls has had conversations with the provincial government about a coroner's inquest and have those led anywhere?
We drafted and sent a letter to Minister Begg this morning calling for the inquest, and that's the first time that we've announced that, and today is the first time that we've announced the findings from the second opinion.
Sue, what is the name of the pathologist?
Dr. Matthew Ord.
Hi, Michelle with CBC. We know that all three of these cases are under investigation, or the police responses to the cases are under investigation by the UBCIC. I wonder what that indicates to you that not one, not two, but all three of these cases are kind of under scrutiny by the body that looks into police complaints.
Well, as we said earlier, all three of these cases from the very beginning were the subject of massive failures by all of the investigative authorities involved. When it comes to the quality of police investigations, those flow directly from the findings of the coroner and the quality of the coroner's investigation and the conclusions that they draw based upon the evidence feeds into whether there's an effective investigation. One of the big questions that arises for us, particularly in the context, all three cases, but particularly in Tatyanna Harrison's case, where the VPD was, well, actually, no, in all three cases, where the VPD failed to properly investigate their disappearances, where there were delays before missing persons investigations were announced, where we didn't see a massive search. One of the big questions that we have is whether those delays actually resulted or caused directly or indirectly the deaths of these three young women, which is one of the big questions that can be answered in a coroner's investigation. So the failures by the VPD and the failures by the coroner, they are deeply connected, inherently connected, and the patterns of systemic discrimination that have been well documented in so many investigations and inquiries are the same. Those patterns bore out in all three of these girls' cases. They shouldn't have disappeared. These girls' deaths and disappearances were preventable. Had those investigations, recommendations been implemented, these three girls could be with us today. And the patterns across the board are the same.
And for the families, are you still getting updates from Vancouver Police? Is there a sense that there's movement in any of these cases?
No.
There was a report, an internal report that the VPD did. I tried to FOI it and was told I couldn't get it. I'm just curious if you detected a sort of, I'm specifically talking about Chelsea Poorman, this report. I'm just curious, Sheila, have you had any in getting that report, or Sue, have you tried to obtain it?
I did try to do a Freedom of Information request to the Vancouver Police Department on behalf of Sheila in Chelsea's case, and was informed that documents couldn't be released because it would be harmful to law enforcement. I have yet to reconcile that with the January 25th statements from the VPD where they state that while her case is open, they don't deem it to be criminal. So I have a lot of questions, but to date, the Vancouver Police have not released that report.
And Sheila, have you ever been able to get the autopsy report for Chelsea?
No, I haven't.
Do you know why?
I think it was due to that it was still an open investigation, is what I was told.
We do have a pending FOI request for the coroner's report.
Okay. I'm just puzzled by that because I know there have been cases of private investigators looking into other cases that they've been able to get it, so I just don't know why that would be blocked at this point. It's really frustrating. I reported on like more systemic problems with the BC Coroner Service. We have the lowest percentage of autopsies for suspected overdose deaths across Canada, and it's really, really, really low compared to other Canadian jurisdictions. Just given what you, Natasha, have experienced with the coroner, I'm just curious if you think there needs to be more than a coroner's inquest, whether there needs to be some sort of inquiry looking at both the police and coroner at this point.
Do you want to take this?
I think with respect to these 3 cases, there does need to be an inquest into the very suspicious circumstances of their disappearances and deaths, and looking at the various failures that may have contributed to their deaths, systemic and specific to these cases. But beyond that, I do agree with you. I have deep concerns based on our observations at Justice for Girls and our work on behalf of families with respect to the quality of the death investigations into cases involving suspected overdose deaths. We know that hot capping, which is a term that's used to describe murder by opioids, happens, and we don't have any sense of how prevalent that is, but we believe that it's a serious concern and a serious risk, and we don't believe that the standards and approaches by investigators in British Columbia are adequate to be properly catching that as a form of homicide. Again, we have too little information about these 3 cases to even begin to speculate as to whether that was a situation here, but that's the point. We have too many questions. We need answers. That's what a coroner's inquest is for, so we want to start there.
Tina Hill, CBC National News, Citizens for UC. With the national inquiry for the murder missing women, particular inquiry, we've got all these recommendations. Clearly nothing has been done. You're asking for an inquiry now. What do you want to happen from your inquiry that you're requesting?
It's our hope that an inquest into the deaths of Tatyanna, Chelsea, and Noelle will shed light on the various systemic failures, missteps by investigators at every step, as well as the failures to prevent deaths and disappearances of extremely marginalized Indigenous women and girls. It's no longer satisfactory or appropriate for us to sit back and say, oh, it's just another death or it's just another disappearance. We have ample evidence documented through investigations and inquiries that Indigenous women and girls are targeted for violence, that genocidal, systemic forms of discrimination and violence impact them as they walk through their lives from the moment that they are born. And so their deaths and their disappearances need to be treated as extremely important and with a high degree of care and attention and resources by the police and the investigations. We need to see quality and thorough investigations into every single death and disappearance of an Indigenous girl or woman in this province and in this country. And we need to see their deaths and their disappearances immediately treated as homicides and worked backwards from there, rather than seeing discriminatory stereotypes, judgments, and biases seeping into the quality of the investigations by the coroner, by the police, and by other authorities. And those are lessons that ought to have been learned from the 6 investigations and inquiries that have already happened, and that's what all of those hundreds of recommendations speak to. So we need to see action, and this is an opportunity for the province to step up and show that they're going to take action.
Mm-hmm. And then a question for Grand Chief with the newly elected.
You have to repeat it, I can't hear.
Yeah. With the newly elected federal government.
Federal government.
Yeah. Do you have a message to the Prime Minister Carney?
Go ahead.
Oh, do you have a message for the Prime Minister?
Huh?
Do you have a message for the Prime Minister?
I didn't hear that, but
Oh, yeah. Do you have a message for the newly elected Liberal government and the Prime Minister Carney, that is now our Prime Minister in Canada, in regards to MMAWG in Canada?
Grand Chief, we have a new elected Prime Minister, Mark Carney. Do you have a message for him in
Oh,
regards to
okay,
missing
okay.
murdered Indigenous
Yeah.
women and girls?
I think that the last election, or should say the recent election is a pretty stark a stark example of the fact that Indigenous people are not a priority with the provincial government, with the federal government, municipal governments. You know, we're simply overlooked, we're never listened to, and these issues continue to intensify. And our message to the federal government is, you know, get off the pot. Get on with investing in the human rights of Indigenous peoples, people of color, the gender community, and ensure that they have the right to safe, quiet enjoyment of their everyday lives, rather than being victimized on our streets with impunity. So get on with it.
I also wanted to add for Noelle's case, she was not only failed by the government, by border services as well, with the failed deportation of her murderer. Jimmy Pham should have been deported, and through media, through news reports, we found that the judge did state that he was quite happy knowing that he was a danger and he was in community. And so I just wanted to add that, sitting here thinking about that, she was also failed by the border services. They should have deported him. Had they deported him, she very well could have been here to this day.
Any more questions? Okay, I think we'll wrap it there, and if you'd like to talk to anyone individually, you're welcome to approach them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.